Okay. Hello everyone, welcome to today's episode. The title is Is Energy Conscious of Itself? Beyond Psychology. Let's see where to begin. Excuse me. Here's the thing, guys. We find ourselves awakening to our conscious existence. When the child is born, it is not an individual. It technically exists, but has no sort of conscious classification method for its experience. So what does that mean? That means we exist longer or way before we actually become experiencers. The child has no psychology. You go to a newborn child and say something, the newborn child stares at you as if, what do you sing? I don't even know the language yet, So it becomes it becomes a situation where we are being in some way or something prior to even acknowledging things or ourself as a thing. So the idea is that before there is psychology, there is phenomenology. Now, psychology is a certain way we interpret phenomenology in the moment, especially for the human being. Psychology can be considered to be the counter response. It could be kind of seen as the extension of the phenomenology of the environment. That means the environment's extension continues, as if an event occurs, and this event you perceive it, and when you perceive it, it echoes into your inner realms. So it's like outer events echo within us. There we go, that's what I'm trying to say. So the psychology is an echo of an outer event, we can say, or something outer. Now, some words are important to kind of wonder about. We have to look at the definition of energy, we have to look at the definition of consciousness, and we have to look at the definition of beyond. First of all, it's very hard for us our language is dualistic. Language is a dualistic technology. So for us to look at energy and to see a non-dual component to it is really, I don't know, I have this mentality, there is energy, then this energy, after being directed in a certain way, became conscious. So technically energy can't be created or destroyed, it's everywhere, it just changes form. So consciousness can be considered to be the kinetic energy, and pure awareness can be considered the potential. Pure awareness has no ideological expectation upon the moment. If we for a moment think that energy is not created or destroyed, so the only thing that is created or destroyed is the emergence of consciousness. It's as if our heart beats, it's as if our heart beats regardless of if we close our eyes or not. And it's as if consciousness is how we have opened our eyes, but the heart is still beating. Energy, I feel, consciousness is awareness to the presence of energy through form. Now, the mystics would comprehend energy formlessly, and they would get to a point where they would realize before it was them here, there was nature. So I feel true mysticism opens up to those who have a hidden reverence for nature. I'm telling you, there's something about this natural world is going to fascinate you beyond anyone else's opinion. Something about how you see life will fascinate you. And it will fascinate you out of your own conceptions. Yeah? So, Samson and Ivan, welcome to the chat section, guys. I don't know. I think it's an important question to ask. I mean, we're all looking for energy, are we not? Physical survival is energy. It's like I need energy to have energy to survive, to have more energy. You know, that's human life for you. You're chasing energy. You know, when you are energy, just to have more energy. You know, it's hilarious. For me, energy, being conscious, is consciousness. Therefore, there is an existential and experiential dimension. I thought I was alone, then I realized the yogis saw it similarly, but they called it Purusha Prakriti. And the simultaneity of consciousness and matter. That means if you saw consciousness and matter through the chicken, or which came first, the chicken or the egg dynamic. So what that means is like, was there conscious, was there awareness first, then a self, or was there self, then an awareness, you know? So I feel there's a simultaneity of the chicken and the egg. Vedanta kind of puts that problem to the rest. Which came first, chicken or the egg? No. The awareness that simultaneously allows both of them to be here came first, you know? So Ivan says, have you read The Last Question by Isaac Asimov? Gives a good answer to your question. No, Ivan, I haven't, but I know who Isaac Asimov is. Do you want to share his answer to the last question? Or whatever. I have a lot of respect for Isaac Asimov. He has this quote that the moment he said it, it got ingrained. He said it got ingrained in my mind. It was like I instantly remembered it. It was he said, "Violence is the last refuge of the incompetent." That's all I know about Isaac Asimov, guys. I feel that energy can't really see itself. I feel consciousness is like the tip of the iceberg. And I feel what we really are as beings transcends the limits of our perception and the limits of our, and if our perception is limited, automatically the language is limited, right? That's another way of saying if you see only half of the room and half of the room is in darkness, then you can't even, you know. I see what you mean, Ivan. I'm not sure, but because I feel the answer would most likely be probably consciousness is psychology. So because he's a scientist, Isaac Asimov, I think uh, he would not kind of like impose personification to like scientists when they reach a point where they can't see further, they just accept they can't see further. But certain people who reach a certain point they can't accept further, they're kind of like theoretical physicists. You see as far as the physics allows, and then you're theorizing about something more. Oh, okay, yeah. So the title is a personification. Interesting. So Isaac Asimov says energy feels nothing. So he's ascribing feeling to the human character. That's a good question. Is pain a psychological phenomena, or can energy feel pain? This episode might get deep, guys. You know, you might want to fasten your seatbelts. You know, yesterday I was thinking about the concept of what qualifies anyone to do anything. What qualifies exploration? So Ivan, I'm reading your comments, man. I can't see the picture you're trying to paint. So what is Isaac Asimov exactly saying about energy being conscious of itself beyond psychology? Oh, energy feels not nor knows what. Yeah. So yeah, knowledge is a conditional. He's seeing knowledge is conditional. Yeah, it's, you know what it is? It's like human beings after some point of exploration of any system will come to its void face. But now here's the thing, is emptiness a mirror? And could there be something beyond that mirror? That would be how I'm kind of approaching it. I wonder how I'm conscious of myself, and there is no psychology. My attention is instantaneous. That means it's like the psychology comes when there's movement. So it's kind of like wondering if the beginning of the universe was static, and that's why we have an awareness, as if our minds are a static field, our body is a dynamic particle. Imagine, you know. Energy is being. I think how energy moves, I think potential energy is being, kinetic energy is doing things, and I think there's a sort of simultaneous observance of it. Yeah, psychology, the way I've kind of been introduced to it is the study of the psyche, and the psyche comes from the unknown primal mover. So it is in some sense kind of like a curiosity to know why creatures are moving the way they are, you know? You know, for a long time, guys, I was thinking in Japan they have a saying. They say the man is the man is the room he enters. Now, I noticed something incredible. Not when you enter a room, not only does the room have a meaning, but wherever your attention goes as a human being, you're kind of weaving the next steps of the meaning. So I feel that when we enter a place, if we were an object, um, I mean, I'm trying to think of it this way, like imagine there's an android, a robot, and there's a human. The android goes into the room, scans the room, and due to its based on its ability, processes it. So psychology is dependent on the ability we have to process what's happening in the room. So I would say psychology is a definition in itself. It's a process. The psychology of a human being is a process between the relationship of the self and the world. So it's literally, I would say it like that because in deep sleep, I'm not a person. I'm not a character. I retain no consciousness. No, Ivan, it's totally okay. These chat like the chat section is meant to inspire kind of philosophical conversations. You know. um, I don't know, guys. I was told, in my schooling days, that in some sense energy can't be created or destroyed. And I thought about it, and all the spiritual traditions and wisdom traditions, they're saying you're this thing that's never gets destroyed, And I was like, okay, a secular society calls it energy, religious society calls it God, and spiritual society just remains in silence, experiencing that, you know? Do you know what I mean, guys? Literally, energy is the word for God, and God is the word for energy. So I could totally see the theist and the atheist endlessly debating over languages. Am I not saying like what is the apparent thing? Everybody needs a sort of archetype. You know what I'm saying? We need an archetype for the inconceivable. Some people call it energy, some people call it God. You know? No, guys, I'm serious. I don't know how many people listening to this have lived in a theocratical society, a society where there is religious law infused with political law. And in those societies, religion is kind of, you gotta know it like science. Do you know? For me, it's all, we're just explorers, temporary explorers of an endlessly manifest world. Now, it's not just physical exploration. Our observance of subjectivity leads us to action. Our actions can lead to evocation of new incidents. That means that I haven't gotten into it in these talks because usually it's unnecessary. But I think at some point in the future, I'm going to feel, I think most likely after 2022. I think I think what it is there are relationships that transcend. I personally, in my experience, have had relationships, states of mind, where the relationship of a self and relationship of the relationship of a self and the relationship of the world is different. I've literally existed in experience moments where my experience has no identification. It's just presence of the moment, and existence has become my subjective body. The whole moment is my subject. It's like I'm not a person in the moment, I am the moment and everything's in it. So I've experienced states of mind like that, and I've also experienced states of mind where the existence defines the experiential dimensions. So it's kind of interesting. It's like if your body suddenly extremely moves, it influences your mind, and if your mind extremely moves, it influences your body. You know, there's something we see in movies, sees off and movies often, and films often, and what it is the obstacle of the main character. And the obstacle of the main character is a sudden loss, as if like in many shows, for example, for me, I am a huge fan of Japanese storytelling. For me, the Japanese are the greatest storytellers. I think I can accept that. You know, I mean, every culture has its own stories. I mean, you can't compare, of course, certain narratives and ways of living. But I'm telling you, in Japan, Japanese shows have the greatest character development. Why? Because the characters experience an intense loss. And so it's like an internal loss, you know? So, guys, my attentions come back to the chat section. I'm like a bird. I fly into the sky giving the talk, then I come back to the branch of the chat section, and it's like, what up? There are experiences where the self moves faster than the world. All those people who have relationships with the metaphysical nature of the world, your self is moving faster than your world. So you're seeing different dimensions to yourself. You know? uh, if your world is moving faster than you, the world will feel multidimensional. I don't know what it is. I think there was a time I was like in my youth. I was fond of puzzles. I was fond of solving problems. Uh, I remember certain things I would attempt to solve, only at the end realize they had no answer. So you can say that in the moment when you're trying to solve a problem that has no answer, you really do feel life is like a simulation. You know. Okay. Okay, guys, I'll say it. So there's this. All right, guys, here the chat section is kind of. All right, I'll say it for the sake of the chat section. There's this guy that you can see a pizza place, you can see a hot dog stand. Let's take the hot dog stand version, okay? This monk goes to a Zen monk goes to a hot dog stand, okay? And the guy says, "What do you want on your hot dog, monk?" And the monk says, "Make me one with everything." That's the joke. Make me one with everything. Okay, so that's the first part of the joke. All right, the guy says, "Make me one with everything." Okay, now the guy makes this big giant pizza with everything, pizza or hot dog with everything on it, right? And he gives it, and the monk gives him the money, and the guy gives him the hot dog, and the guy doesn't give him back the change. The hot dog owner doesn't give back the monk the change, and the monk is like, "Where's my change?" And the hot dog owner looks at him, and he's like, "Change only comes from within." That's the second part. That's how I know it. The monk, the guy says, change comes from within. He doesn't give the monk his change. The monk is like, this society's messed up. And guys, I don't know, I guess that kind of relates to the talk because, in some sense, really, change is an inner phenomena, is it not? Change is really an inner phenomenon. My big guys, I gave a talk. I think, let me find the talk. It was one of what I would consider would be one of the most um, interesting ideas. Like in all these Mr. Within talks that I've given, there was one day I was giving a talk, and let me see the title. I think it was this talk that I gave called. Let me find it. Oh, there we go. Is the self inside reality? 1147. Yeah, is the self inside reality? Guys, that's my biggest thing. That's what I think is gonna open the species on a massive level. Okay? Uh, that our self is not a physical thing. We are treating our ideas of self as if they are physical. Okay? I mean, sure, on some level, I was like, how can I name matter? How can I name matter? And I think that's the thing. I think language is what we should study. I think language is the extraterrestrial in Terra. I think language, our ability and usage of language, is the mystery of how energy is having psychology. So I think it's in the conditioning of language. Because, guys, on some level, I was thinking you need to know the alphabet to get access to the words of a language, okay? And so it's kind of like everything that a person does, let's for a second think it's communication. Let's say that instead of movement, we think that anytime a person moves physically, they're communicating physically. Let's say there is physical communication and non-physical communication. Non-physical communication, just like speech, these words, these sounds, they're not like an object. They appear as subjective. But physical communication would be how somebody, let's say, even sign language is a physical communication, or you can say any movement. A break dancer is physically communicating. That means, let's say there are aliens, there's a few, okay, let's say this playfully, this hypothetically, this alien civilization comes to Earth and they don't speak a non-physical language. They speak the language of movement. So they come and see a break dancer and they think the break dancer is saying poetry, imagining an alien language through physical communication, you know? So I am kind of looking at it. Yeah, yeah. That's a good way of saying it. I have an overt and covert communication. Oh yeah, nice, nice. So that's the neurological term. Yeah. So overt communication and covert communication. So which one is so Ivan, which one is neurology considering overt? Physical? The physical one? Probably. Overt communication neurologically would be outside, right? Probably. For a long time, guys, I was like, what would telepathy mean? Telepathy would mean we are thoughts in one mind. We are all drops of the same field. That's what telepathy would mean. So JH in the chat section, I would say that if we become a telepathic civilization, that means we have understood that energy instantaneously knows itself, the psychology only through the conditions of time, space, and a sort of physical uh, balance it perceives itself. So here's the interesting thing. I've noticed that if a person, like if you physically as a human being don't eat for a couple of days, your psychology gets changed. Your psychology gets changed. That means a lot of people that you see, for example, in the downtown areas of countries that are insane, these people are technically, they behave insane, but the reason they're behaving insane is because the humanity has insanely avoided their human nature. You see, human beings don't just need food, they also need to be acknowledged as a human being, right? That's the most crucial thing. That it's like the first help is not a physical help. The first help is, all right, it's a human being. Then it's whatever kind of human being. Do you see? We have to, that's the kind of intellectual's compassion, where you are seeing the various dimensions in phenomena, you know? For me, communication can happen like you're breathing. Like you don't think about your breathing, and it kind of happens. There is something that I notice both in the shamanic tradition and strangely in the Christian tradition. In the Christian tradition, these are two things that I've noticed, and it's this concept called glossolalia. Glossolalia is when suddenly the person starts speaking in tongues, starts speaking a different language. If you were Christian in your mindset, probably it would be the emergence of the Holy Spirit or the Holy Ghost. But if you were a shaman, it would be literally an interdimensional shift. You know, it would be in some sense you're being the embodiment of higher minds. So think of it this way: you look at your physical body, and you look at this world, and you see there's people who are bigger than you, and you see there's people who are smaller than you. Now, even though the mind is not an object, but there can be fields of space, intelligent space. That means energy, I personally feel, can be intelligent, and psychology, because it is our own sunglasses. If you can put on your sunglasses anywhere, you can literally go into a dimension and impose personhood, right? This world we're in right now, that is the case. Okay, it's moving based on a constant attention, responding to phenomena kind of way. Mhm. I have breathed through many forms, in many states of mind. What has been kept common has been the simple presence. I can tell you that something you will feel that hasn't changed since your beginning of your life is breathing. I can tell you the breath is one of the greatest tools to navigate in altered states of mind. People don't realize it. People think meditation was just a bunch of people worshiping a statue. That's what people think. But meditation is not that. Meditation is meditation is how you're alive once and you have an opportunity to go further than your species. That's it. On some level, I thought about it and I'm like, if I was a civilization, this is not a very abstract thing to think about, but I was thinking, if I was a civilization, if I literally was looking as the eyes of a collective being and I was seeing all these individual beings, do you see? I was thinking, what would I care? What would I want? Like, if I was for a second thinking, if I was the earth, what would I want human beings to do? You know? And there's two views you can have it. Either no human being has ever made a mistake and it has been nature. Yeah, I mean that's a really interesting philosophical kind of view where it's as if no one has done anything wrong. People have just been doing different things. That means one way that, I mean, of course, if you really structure your morality, you're gonna suffer. That means if you define something as good and if you define something as bad, then anytime it goes beyond the parameters of your definition, you're going to be like, what happened to my goodness? What happened to the bad? You know, the good and bad are playing tag. Literally, it's the attention of the human being to the efficient and the efficient, I think. Guys, I need a few minute breather. If anybody's been listening from the beginning, I recommend you get a breather too. And I'll be back in a few minutes. Much blessings and all. Okay. Alright, guys, I'm back. Hold. Okay, let's see. Guys, I want to say something interesting. Everything to the future, the past is nonsense. To the past will always appear as nonsense to the future. Uh, I'm just questioning the senses. I would say my talks could relate to, I'm commenting on beyond the senses, so technically there's no way to verify them through the senses, let's say, if we're talking about something that goes beyond sensory perception. But anyways, guys, I was thinking about what does this mean? What does this mean when 8 billion people imagine suddenly realize they're not their psychologies and they're just energy being conscious of itself? I was even asking, why should energy be conscious of itself? What's the point? I mean, did we evolve only to see the suffering? Like, it kind of, when you look at evolution, you see that if we weren't conscious that we were creatures, imagine all of this happened, civilization happened, but we weren't experiencing it as an individual. You know? That means, imagine you fast forwarded history and none of it was, no person had an identity to themselves. You see what I mean? I was thinking, why is it that we became conscious? So then I kind of got this feeling that what we call suffering is a misinterpretation of the overall picture. And I think that's what Buddha caught on to when he went the path, the middle way, you know? So I am kind of looking at civilization and I'm like, people are not just, it's like behind your eyes, you're seeing, like, okay, imagine somebody comes and says, like, who's playing Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, there is four ways the person can answer. Do you see? Imagine you're playing Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. There's four options, and each decision will imply a different you. So in your mind, before you actually physically move, you are actually moving as a self. So I feel psychology is multi-dimensional behind our eyes. In front of our eyes, we can only experience one out of the choices. And I would consider that the only intelligence is alertness to what is there. It's just awareness to what is there. I don't feel you can measure. I don't feel you can measure pain. Do you know? I mean, you can physically, I'm not talking about physical pain. I'm talking about, like, just think about it. There's 8 billion creatures on a sphere in a vacuum where, like, what is the meaning? And so even science has studied the process of how these creatures have emerged, but still we can't understand the meaning because we have to build it. So you can say the future is a creative phenomena. The past, it can't be creative. The past is already defined, you know? And so I was always thinking, why do some people say the past defines the future, the past defines the future, do you know? And I was like, because it's as if we are tunneling through every experience. And as we're tunneling through all these moments of meaning, I mean, think about it. Yesterday I was giving a talk and I was feeling like a totally different vibe. Now I'm giving this talk, I'm feeling a different vibe. And it's like, what are these differences? You know? It's as if, like, sometimes I wonder as the years go by, the person blows the birthday candle cakes only to realize that who is blowing? It's not the same physical constitution. So our body is a sort of backup system to make sure that regardless of how much we think we're one kind of being, it's changing, right? There's this man named Shri Prabhupada. He brought the Hare Krishna movement to America in the 80s when all the hippie movement was kind of like opening up to the psychedelic LSD kind of phase in American culture. Guys, existentially, there is no past, present, future, but experientially, there appears to be, because we're changing, and because we're changing, we refer from points of change. So as you're going to point A to B to C to D, this all seems to be a straight arrow line of time going forth. Yes. So, guys, J Edge says something nice in the chat section. He says, life is change and change is life. Yeah. Life changes and change lives, you know? That's why, guys, there could be literally the most advanced extraterrestrial being could come on our planet and we'll be like, bro, you know, you could be so advanced, you could be have the most advanced technology, but we all know we change in this universe. Yeah. I feel energy is conscious of itself through psychology simply because after our attention was identifying with objects being truth, which was object worship, the objects were slapped out of our hands and it was subjects. That means we gotta think about that moment, guys. The moment like idol worship stopped, and before idol worship there was nature worship. Okay, and nature worship was kind of like the dude saw a tree and felt that tree was God, was the only God. Like none of the other trees were God, only that tree was God. Like that would be a sort of pantheistic worship. Okay? Sorry, not pantheistic. Yeah, pantheistic worship. And so we went from looking at stuff and being like, oh my god, this thing is truth. And somebody was like, no man, that's not true. I'll tell you a story. It's not a Zen story. It's a story that actually comes from uh, an Islamic context. It's a story of, I think it happened in Sunni culture. The story is there's this man, he sees a bunch of people, this Muslim guy back in the day, he sees a bunch of people worshiping a tree. And he gets, in some sense, an axe. He gets an axe. And he's like, this is messed up. These guys are worshiping this tree. And in Islam, they have this, it's a monotheistic religion. So this monotheistic religion considers that there's one God and there is no other God other than that God. Do you see? You know? So this guy sees these people worshiping this tree, literally like, I don't know, he sees a crowd of people bowing to this tree and he's like, this is messed up, I'm gonna go cut this tree. Okay? Now the guy goes and the story says Shaitan, which is like the archetype of duality in religion, the devil, what do you call it? The Lucifer, the fallen angel in religion and Christianity. Lucifer, I believe, is in theology, in Christian theology, Lucifer is the name of the angel before it descends. And when it descends, it becomes this. So in this story, Shaitan, Satan, I think they call it. So in some sense, this guy comes and this archetype of evil and chaos appears, or not chaos, dualism, you know. So what happens is through a person, this Shaitan appears and says, "I'm not going to let you cut this tree. I'm not going to let you cut this tree that these people are worshiping." And the guy gets into this physical fight. And remember, I'm saying Shaitan comes through the form of a person, comes through a person. Okay, and in some sense, in this story, what do you call it? Sorry, guys, I'm distracting myself by the sounds outside. This guy sees a bunch of people worshiping a tree. He goes to cut the tree. Evil comes to him. Shaitan appears. You know, and says, "I'm not going to let you cut the tree." The guy gets into a physical fight with this person who Shaitan is in technically in the story, and the guy beats him. The guy is stronger, and he beats him. And right when he's about to cut the tree with the axe, Shaitan looks at him, and they say that, in some sense, in a religious context, the devil or Shaitan, whether you're Christian or Muslim, in some sense, tries to attack your character. So what happens is the guy is about to cut the tree, and Shaitan says to him, "Listen," "You don't cut the tree, man. I'll give you 3 gold coins every night." That was a lot of money. It's like he was like, "I'll give you $3 million every night." And so the guy suddenly, he gives in to temptation, and he's like, "Yo, I need the money, okay?" And he doesn't cut the tree, and he's like, "You better give me the coins. And the guy goes home, and he goes home, he waits at night. He suddenly, at night, hears 3 knocks on the door, opens the door, sees there's 3 gold coins. Then, the second night he waits, he hears a knock, he sees there's 3 gold coins. Then, the night after, there is no knock and there's no gold coins. And this guy's like, "Yo, this is the deal. He gets the axe the next day to go cut it. The next day he goes to cut it, and remember, guys, this is a kind of in a religious context. This is a story, religious story, and so I don't want to say it's a religious story. It's a story in a religious context, and so what happens is the guy gets the axe, and he's like, "The gold coins didn't come," and he goes to cut the tree. And when he goes to cut the tree, that the shaitan or that devil in human form appears again. And says, "I'm not going to let you cut this tree these people are worshiping." And the guy gets into this fist fight again, but this time, the same kind of human form of the devil beats the guy. And the guy is shocked. And he says, "How was it that I fought you a few days ago and I was way stronger than you? But now I'm fighting you and you're stronger than me." And the devil says to him that because before you wanted to cut the tree for your natural justice, for that God you held as your truth. You were gonna do something first through your own truth. Then your character. So in some sense, that's the moral of the story. That's why the whole story exists, guys. That's why these words exist. Simply just to communicate this imagery that the person was not doing it for what was real to them. They suddenly got desire. Like, think about it. The guy wanted to cut the tree because of what he felt it was true. He was being like a good citizen, okay? Like a conscious citizen. The same way atheists, for example, look at theists. On some level, they're like, there's so many other ideas. Why is the theist only looking at that idea? So they kind of feel every counterculture has this urge to free those before it. It's just natural. It's designed in the system. You look back at some point, and then you look forward, then you look back, and so you realize the various ranges of your attention. So the moral of the story was that when you do something that is true, it is very different than doing something for a future truth, to get something from the world. Literally, the guy had a selfless motive, then he had a selfish motive. When you have a selfish motive, that's when your ship sinks. Whatever you're doing in this life. If you just go into a resonance where you're like, "Yo, I'm going to get something from this moment." If you go into that mentality, I'm telling you, it's as if nature will feel you have been rude to her. Nature. Nature has a presence. I feel when we truly comprehend ourselves as energy, we are in some sense not just the psychology. So technically, I think energy's always there. The psychology transforms out of conscious conditions into perhaps an unconscious, unconditional state. You know, I look at a caterpillar go through metamorphosis, and I'm like, technically the caterpillar died, but it's alive as a butterfly. Like when you look at a butterfly, you don't see a caterpillar there. You see a butterfly. But in some sense, the caterpillar died in one dimension. Its caterpillarness stopped existing, and its butterflyness began. Yeah, guys, I noticed for a couple seconds this thing was on mute. I don't know. There is something that I feel there's a question and it's not being asked. And I don't know what that question is, but I know that the future is waiting for it. For a long time, I thought this life it had too much information in it, and I was just judging it. I was saying, like, what's the point of me caring for anyone else? You know, I had this mentality in my youth where I was like, all right, I'm just here to go on I thought life was a wonderland and I just wanted to go on my own roller coaster ride. Then I realized the roller coaster rides are not only interconnected, but there is a mystery. There is something I can't say. There is something that is not a concept that's going on here. And I think that's the other tenant in the room that Terence McKenna was speaking about. And I think if we keep thinking we're objects, if we keep only fighting for the freedom of objective phenomena and the space, like you gotta understand, space is an abstract idea. So when a person says, give me space, man, give me some space, you know, that that's an abstraction. That means let the mind settle. Let the ripples of the mind settle. I'm telling you, every moment, this is why they said patience is a virtue. You know, when you are patient, the ripples settle, you see more. I can tell you, one of my uncles, he was a guy who would play chess, with three people at the same time, eyes closed, and I was like, "What the?" I was like, "WTF?" Like, I was like, "This guy's playing chess with three people with his eyes closed." And then I realized later on he had a relationship with his inner realms that his imagination couldn't move. I've established that to some point, but not completely. Like right now, I feel I can do things when I close my eyes that perhaps, you know, is not common in society. For example, I don't know how many people know this. The first thing to notice is that imagination appears as your private room. But the second thing to understand that is a private room in regards to physical beings. That means when you kind of get a sense that you're a being beyond your senses, you kind of look at life differently. Now, there's two more pathways to the multidimensional. In my talks, I make sure I am piloting people towards a confrontation of the unknown. That means if at the end of my talk you suddenly look at life again and you feel unknown. That's what I have kind of achieved what I had set out for, because I realized there is no teaching, there is no one truth. And what I mean by that is there is no one a linguistic truth. Language is poetry, language is art, language is throwing paint on a canvas. That means if you really think about the alphabet, it was like we just accepted the letter A to be like, with a triangle with two legs, We choose the capital, the letter, the capitalized O to be zeroed. That means I would say the letter O, the capital O in the English alphabet, is also is the mathematical ambassador of the number zero and a capital O. Literally connect the numerical with the language, with the alphabet, with the alphabetical. Like, honestly, don't people get a sense that numbers are like an alphabet? Numbers are like another alphabet, you know? For me, mathematics is a language. It's not it's not something outside. It's a language. You can mathematically express the world. For example, mathematically, time can move backwards. I don't know how many people know this. You know, I wondered about some of the inventors in my youth. I honestly really um, had wanted to actually invent stuff. But I'll tell you this. I noticed something. I looked into certain inventors, and I, for example, look at Tesla's life, and I looked at, for example, Edison's life, and I noticed something interesting. Both of them were drawn to a subject that was ahead of their objective landscape. The concept of a light bulb, or the DC motor, or the concept of the AC motor. Do you see? Like Nikola Tesla was literally writing in his notebook in a park, sitting on a park bench feeding pigeons or something, and then he gets this eureka moment vision of the AC motor in his inner realms, in his subjective realms, and he draws it on the sand. That means the AC motor, guys, led to modern civilization. That means if science needed to have a prophet, I think it would be Tesla. Sorry, not science. Technology. What am I saying? If technology was a religion and it needed a prophet, I think Tesla would be the prophet. Let me tell you, it's all language games. It's all projection games. On an experiential level, the truth is not dual. It can move beyond the language threshold. You can experience your moment as empty. You can experience your moment as just one moment. You can experience your moment as multidimensional. You can experience your moment so multidimensional it can't be fathomed and processed by one dimension. That means you could be a being that is moving through so many dimensions so quickly that you can't tell if you're in multiple dimensions or in one dimension. Okay? And I feel that the mind is moving faster than the earth. I mean, think about it. Literally, if the, how would I say it? It's like, if the world was changing so fast, we couldn't stand on it, if the atoms that we were standing on, you know? On some level, it's fascinating. It's like the concept of standing. If you were looking at it atomically, there's no such thing as standing. There's no such thing as verbs and nouns for atoms. It's just atoms moving in space. And for me, that's the unique thing, that we became a person. That look at your body right now. I mean, look at nature. A lot of things don't have the symmetry of the human body. Creatures have a geometrical advancement ahead from their environment. Let me tell you how I feel it is when I speak, guys. if you like, if I could somehow show you inside the pilot's cabin, uh, I would tell you that the experience is literally like an eagle flying into a sky. The more the eagle flies into the sky, the more you observe reality. Imagine every time you observe something, you like an eagle are flying into the sky. Every time you act or move or say something, you're going on the branch. You know? So literally in these talks, it's kind of like I'm flying into the sky, coming back on the branch, flying into the sky, coming onto the branch. Behind my eyes, experiencing this collective field, and in front of my eyes, ta 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 speaking. Oh man. Let me tell you guys, there is a mystery. We are the living mystery. And if you look for a mystery outside, you're going to look at it inside at some point. I think scientists have no choice but to eventually help psychologists and psychology advance. That means I feel psychology is the younger brother. Here's the thing. I feel this is it. Psychology is the oldest brother. Philosophy, and let me tell you, this is what I feel the modern way should be, okay? Psychology is the older brother, then the middle brother is philosophy, then the younger brother is science. Okay, let's just take this and let's keep it in this way, okay? Or let me say it like this. Yeah, let's not make the family too big. You know? The oldest brother, which is psychology, which I am kind of painting this picture for future generations. In the past, that is not the case. In the past, the oldest brother is religion, then is, in some sense, I would say science, and then it is psychology. You know, psychology is the youngest brother, and if we go with mainstream. But I'm saying for the future generations, psychology, let me tell you, we have experienced messed up psychology. Psychology, I don't know what it was, I think it was in the 50s or something, it was messed up. Literally, it was like, yeah, it was messed up. That's the best thing I could say. I would say it would be savage intrusion. Psychology started from chaotic intrusion, but now I feel we're reaching a point where psychologists are going to be seen as enlightened beings. Why? Because psychology holds the wisdom that the philosopher doesn't have and the scientist doesn't have. Psychology is an infusion of the world because you are a scientifically measurable biological being, but the ideas and stories and characteristics you have, they are abstract. So technically, just like we inhale, exhale, we require reality and imagination to live as a human being. Okay? So what does that mean? That means everybody has an imagination. It's not like, no, if anybody in this world is living and saying, I don't know, man, I don't have an imagination, I'm not creative. It's like, how dare you when the world is creative? Everything moves. Everything has rhythm. And you as a conscious being have an activity, have the ability to tap into these conscious rhythms. Do you know what that means? That means I want you to imagine we are a civilization of fish. And we've built this civilization at the bottom of the sea in some coral civilization. And this civilization, we have never left it. We have never wondered about what else is there, right? And imagine some fish, they go outside of civilization just like some sages would go or the shaman would go live at the outskirts of town. They would go outside of the civilization. And what would those individual fish who were brave enough to go beyond their comfort? What do they see? Those fish suddenly feel currents and they come back running into their coral civilization that as long as we're living in the coral, we are missing out on everywhere else, that every other option. That means I think that literally we are beings that are solidifying, liquefying, and even turning something into gas in an instant. Like, what does that mean? That means you just look at the substance of water. It can be in a solid state, It's in a liquid state, and it's in some sense, and it can be in a gas state. So look at the human being. We're saying we're pure matter. We're saying no, we're soul. We're pure gas, or we're in somewhere in the middle. We're liquid, and I feel we need a fluid civilization. We need a civilization that understands it's a river. It has no meaning. That's what I wanted to, if I ever have a chance to speak to the UN, I kind of wrote it in my sci-fi novel in case in the future people who read the sci-fi novel, they can go do it. But here's the idea is really this, that I was thinking United Nations, are we living in a fantasy? How can you be separate nations but also be united at the same time? And then I realized here's the issue. Here's the issue. We have to see all the nations. I explained this in Civilization 2.0. You have to look at all the nations. Right now, it's... Guys, I'm going to give a warning to the audience. So my stomach may roar like a lion, but just don't mind it. Yeah, H2O, of course. Guys, I'm just saying, literally, some people think life is only solid, some people think life is liquid, some people think it's gas, but there are some people who say you can pilot through it. You can pilot through it. In your conscious waking state, you must be a fearless material being. In your liquid state, you are a mind moving a body. You should be a fearless mind. Do you know what that means? That means after you've conquered the fear of being a person, then in order to navigate in your inner realms, you have to conquer the fear of being a world. You can be a world, by the way. This may be an uncommon sentence, but you can be a world. You're technically being one, just by the instantaneous presence of your sight in this manifest reality. I feel when energy is conscious of itself through the conditions of how far we've evolved as a creature. Now, energy doesn't have purpose. That means what's the life purpose of energy that can't be created or destroyed? Nothing. It's just energy is being energy. But it is consciousness which appears as an extension of this unconscious energy. Okay, something is keeping all this here, and whether it's the laws of nature, forces that have no animate mind, or it's like, what's scary? Materialism is kind of saying nature is hallucinating personhood. And immaterialism is saying nature is the hallucination of the soul, the inner person, the true nature of the person. Which I am telling you, we should attain a sort of metaphysical sophistication as a species where we don't fear emptiness, we study it. They're like, what did the human being do when they realized there was an inevitable void? They studied it. Somebody's like, what are you going to do if the apocalypse happens or extinction happens? And you're like, yo, man, I don't know, I'm just going to study it, I guess. That's really a pure student. That's a straight A student. Even when the apocalypse is happening, you're taking notes. Oh, man. You're taking notes, For me, here's the thing. First of all, I don't understand why scientists didn't set out, like, we should have sent a laptop, with a film in it, and just a button with an arrow to it, and we should have just created a film. Like, Elon Musk has sent a car into space, okay? And his car into space. So he's done the most immortal thing that an entrepreneur can do. Like, Elon Musk, as an entrepreneur, has attained entrepreneurial immortality, not just because of what he's done, because he's literally thrown his car in empty space, and either asteroids are going to hit it and crush it, Or in some sense, I don't know, but I was thinking if we're going to send something into space, we should just have videos on laptops, and then, with the play button highlighted, like on the keyboard, and we should just send out these closed laptops with the video right there for the alien to press play, you know? And then they would see a visual film of what we were as human beings. That means I think one day it's going to happen. Right now, filmmakers, they're kind of like getting their inspiration from everywhere. But I think there's going to come a time where filmmakers are going to be like, wait a minute, what makes sense? For us to create films that in some sense, imagine if there was an extinction event, the leaders of nations would run to the greatest filmmakers and be like, yo, filmmakers, capture everything that happened here on Earth, show what Earth was in all your films, and in some sense, we will send this into an empty space. So I would say this: if we were gonna go extinct, literally there was an extinction event. If we knew we were not gonna continue, the first thing to do is literally throw all our technologies into empty space before everything dies. Do you know? I'm telling you guys, in Civilization 2.0, I say the most important technology, there's two technologies that are the most important technologies. One is nanotechnology in regards to making instantaneous food. And in some sense, nanotechnology and sky city technology. I'm telling you guys, I'm that human being who was meant to remind the civilization that we have to build a castle in the sky. And that castle, its king, is the future generations. Phase 1 of Civilization 2, Mr. Within Civilization 2.0. Civilization 2.0 is an idea that it's a strategy to bypass extinction. Phase 1, build sky cities, design sky cities. You're a child, you want to go into the sciences, you don't have inspiration, I'll give you inspiration. Build cities that will lift up into the sky. That's, first of all, the most safest city you can build, by the way. Phase 2. After all, imagine one day, I've predicted this in 600 years from now. Imagine you're walking in the park and you suddenly look and see that you see from above the trees, you see suddenly the skyscrapers becoming taller, 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 and you're like, what is this? The skyscrapers are becoming taller? And no, you're seeing all human infrastructure globally lift into the sky in massive sky cities. Millions and millions of sky cities lifting up into the orbit. Not into the orbit, not too far into the orbit, okay? Into the sky. And in that sky, in those sky cities, phase 2 will begin, where for 2,000 years we will be living in these sky cities, and the greatest botanists, the grandchildren of all those people who cared for nature, they're going to run and plant, literally, there's going to be giant botany projects where it's called phase 2, Earth Heavena. We heavenize the Earth. Now, phase 1 and phase 2 of Civilization 2 is an endless strategy. That means not only on Earth, if other civilizations mess up, they can go literally lift up into their skies, fix what's on the ground, and then come back to the ground. Now, phase 3 of Civilization 2.0, which I've predicted it's going to be 3,600 years from now, and that's going to be the moment where we officially become an interstellar civilization. But there's going to be two roads, because cyberspace culture would be huge. People don't understand. Right now, people look at technology and they're like, kids, they play so much video games. They don't realize the future is going to be an ability where you live in your game. So multidimensionality can be created artificially, or multidimensional experience can be generated artificially, or it can be generated naturally, or remembered naturally. So it would be two crossroads where we either evolve beyond physical conception, or we go on this interstellar approach where then we would have to set into motion phase 4 of civilization 2.0, which is a massive technological galactic revolution. And what does that mean? That means literally we're gonna have AI go over the whole universe and build civilizations, and once these civilizations are ready for human beings to travel, we in some sense kinda go. So AI is going to be the greatest companion of man. Man's best friend is going to become AI potentially. Yeah, so many. There was this also Japanese narrative sword art online or something, I remember, which had this idea that the cyberspace reality. So I'm saying that I call it language is going to be cyberspace. Okay, when you look at computers, they're written by language. Do you know? So I feel at phase 3 of civilization 2.0, of course, human beings have a choice to keep the heavenized earth as plan B, or for many human beings who for 2,000 years, that's a long time. So some souls may be homesick. So then it's, I just feel that's my strategy. I think that's the smartest thing our civilization can do. And anyone can say anything else, but that's just my vision. That we have to utilize the sky. Oh, and I remember why I brought this up. So now I want you to consider the civilization 2.0 context that I'm speaking through. Now I want you to look at this. Overpopulation is a problem if we remain in two-dimensional space. And I was like, wait a minute. And I noticed the United Nations, everybody has to sign an agreement for this Sky City thing. Let me tell you why, guys. I'm getting unnecessarily excited for this. I was looking at it, and we have I feel human beings, we're going to look at the world and we're going to be like, wait a minute. We have literally taken the surface of the earth, divided it up into pieces, and each of those pieces has its own personality as a nation, let's say. Let's say all these nations are separate. And I was thinking, this is kind of like an all-you-can-eat buffet where every human being has paid to come for the human experience, like an all-you-can-eat buffet. You've paid to enter the restaurant. Now you've held your plate in your hand and you've gone to this all-you-can-eat buffet. You go to get the vegetables and suddenly you see somebody has put their hand over the vegetables or whatever, food, and they're like, yo man, you can't eat it. And you're like, hey man, I paid for the restaurant. You know, I entered to experience, to have the human experience. Okay, I'm a human being before I'm a national creature of some programmed mind. You know, and so you would suddenly see, no, somebody has taken the vegetable side of the buffet, all you can eat buffet trays, and the person says, unless you become a citizen of this country, you can't eat these vegetables. You go eat the chicken, and you see somebody has their hand on the chicken, and they're like, yo, unless you become a citizen of this nation, you can't eat the chicken. And so I was like, this is hilarious, that we have literally, because of this borders, have caused the allocation of resources to be dependent on the relationship of the personalities of nations. That means I'm saying if we were living in sky cities, then it would be an endless buffet for every nation. It's because we are owning the land, we are not allocating the collective resources properly. So there's no issue to overpopulation, because overpopulation should be the only thing. I would encourage it, to be honest. Let me tell you why. Because the big picture is that overpopulation, if we build sky cities, why would that be a problem? We would just have more minds on this earth to solve problems. So overpopulation is not the problem. The problem is everybody living in two-dimensional space, in two-dimensional plane. If we can build sky cities, there's no matter, there's no problem. We can endlessly build, you know? And by that time, we'll probably have, some people will mow their backyards on Mars. I don't know. So for me, the idea where I was kind of building up to this, the idea of a United Nations is not going to be a static idea. It's going to be this idea that the United Nations is an endless, dynamic, advancing, and updating civilization. So I think the only way we can actually have a unity of nations is literally every nation acknowledging that their sense of being that nation, they are sub-nations of an advanced civilization. They are sub-nations of a nation that is not fathomable because it is so advanced, it dares not limit itself. Politics is a waste of time when extinction is literally the book that is the history book being burnt completely. You see, you can burn a history book, and that's just one history book that was burnt. But extinction is the burning of all the history of man. And the only thing that people should care, if you care for the future generations, you should endlessly just walk from your solo universe towards the world that's out there. I'm telling you, the material, what's in front of your eyes, one day will become more of a spiritually significant thing than what's behind your eyes. It's just now we're at a transition points where we've been worshipping objects as subjects, therefore meaning we've been worshipping subjects. Literally, we have been the subjects of subjects. I don't think, that's the most multidimensional sentence I can say for today, We are subjects of subjects to realize that the void was here first. When you don't fear the end, your beginning will be graceful to you and you'll be blissed out your whole life. Is energy conscious of itself beyond psychology? And could it be that you have a psychology in a parallel dimension? That means right now we can see how easy of an idea is. One person can travel to multiple locations, but what if one person, every location you traveled, there was a version of you that was created in that location and remained forever there? Do you know? So you'd kind of see as if energy is conscious of its trail. So psychology, think about it. Let's say right now we're a creature with a sort of idea of ourself. What can happen to this idea of self? It can either advance or it stops. And every time you sleep, your ideological path, belief system, inspiration stops. Did you know in deep sleep there is no atheist or theist? Did you know in deep sleep there is no personhood? It's just absence. Deep sleep is literally the world blinking. Knowledge is not a mask. When you realize you can't hide from your future, you will first cry, then you will laugh, then you will run. You will run towards, you will march. Afterwards, you will just realize this is the only game that your conception has ever known. How could you not have familiarity with it? It's literally like you see it. very big fan of, as I was saying, Japanese stories. And just like we have, for example, Stan Lee, I believe, writing, he's the one who wrote the Marvel comics. Let me double check this. DC Comics or Marvel? Marvel Comics, there we go. So Stan Lee, I would say Stan Lee, for example, the Avengers, that was a giant narrative. You know, that was a giant narrative. Like literally, the box office earnings of the Avenger movies suggests how engaging these stories were. So similar to Stan Lee, I feel in Japan there is uh, uh, what's it called? A manga. Like manga is like a comic book in Japan. It's like a manga artist named Hajime Isayama, and he's literally designed this narrative of Shingeki no Kyojin, which is the next, I would say it is the modern giant epic. That means he's written the next great giant story after Gulliver's Travel and Jack and the Giant Beanstalk. Okay, like there's giants in this world, but they are more chaotic than Gulliver's Travels and whatnot. So there is a scene there. Now think about this. I'm saying the reason I want to share that because it relates to the title in the sense that it says, is energy conscious of itself beyond psychology? I want to give an example of this, okay? And I think Hajime Isayama in Attack on Titan, in this Japanese story comic series, he's kind of shown there's this character. There's this character who is the main character named Eren, and long story short, his father's a doctor, so Eren is like this 12-year-old kid with his father who's the doctor going on visits where his father visits different people. So JH, really quickly, I'm going to give you a quick response to your comment in the chat section. You say maybe deep sleep is the only real moment of being awake. The Rebel Gita paints this picture that if you can be awake, even you can be. There's a fourth state out of the three states, which is the witness. And if you can be there, you can be. Don't think that it's just deep sleep is nothing. I'm saying that for modern psychology. But I'm telling you, you can be conscious in your deep sleep, and if you are conscious in your deep sleep, you are conscious in all states. Doesn't matter if you're dreaming or if it's your conscious waking state. So, anyways, back to the Attack on Titan story. Eren is this 12-year-old kid. His father is this doctor. Now, this doctor is visiting someone who's a friend of, like, he's a friend of their family, and he's going there to check up on his friend, the doctor. And this friend has a young daughter the same age as Eren named Mikasa, and has this like beautiful wife, and the guy, it's like a beautiful family. And now what happens in this scene I want to explain, and I want you to constantly think about how energy is being conscious of itself beyond psychology in this scene I'm telling you. Mikasa, literally in the show, in that scene, is asking her mother about the birds and the bees. And what happens is her mother giggles, says to the father, maybe honey, you should explain it to her. And the father kind of like awkwardly laughs, also says, okay, let's see where to begin. And the father suddenly, there's a knock on the door or something. There's a knock on the door, and Mikasa gets happy because Mikasa thinks Eren, the 12-year-old boy that was going with Dr. Jaeger in the series. Dr. Jaeger, they're all expecting the doctor and Eren to come. The door knocks, it opens, there's a man, and the man is cruel. He instantly stabs him. A thug stabs Mikasa's father. And Mikasa is sitting at the dinner table. Mikasa sees this. The mother doesn't know suddenly why the daughter's eyes are looking like that. The mother sees the daughter's face, sees what's going on. And it's these thugs that have come. And later on you understand Mikasa's family was like a special family in the story. That the Ackermans were like these defending. Later on, this girl. Okay, here I'm gonna tell the story. Then I'm gonna say that point. What happens is, let me find the proper song, guys. It's gonna make it more epic to say. There we go. The thug kills the father. Mikasa's mother shouts at Mikasa, "Run!" and then goes and tries to grab the knife out of the hand of the guy, and she gets killed too. So Mikasa instantly becomes orphaned in that moment in the show. In this comic book by Hajime Sayama. And what happens is that Mikasa goes into a paralysis of fear. She goes into a paralysis of fear. Now, guess what's happened on the other line? There's another storyline simultaneously happening. Eren and Eren's father usually walk together to Mikasa's house, but for some strange reason, Eren on this day decided to walk ahead of his father. He just decided to run up ahead. To run earlier to go see Mikasa, And this character, Eren, you're gonna see, he is the most intuitive character, as if his sense of justice is coming from how clearly he's seeing the situation, the chaos of the situation. He's a character that chaos evokes great power in him throughout the story. Now, throughout the series. Now, anyways, what happens? So Eren has ran forth, and Eren gets to the house closer, so the thief, they don't want to kill Mikasa, so they just tie their hands. And then suddenly one of the thugs, there's more than one thug, there's two thugs that were at the door, the second thug comes in and he says, "You idiot, you weren't supposed to kill the mother." So the mother, Mikasa's mother and Mikasa, they're from a royal, some unique bloodline. Right, so these thugs, later on in the story, you figure out they've come to kind of kidnap Mikasa and the mother. Now, what happens is, so the two thugs came in. The first thug ignorantly kills the mother and the father, and then the thug says, "You idiot." The second thug says to the first thug, "You idiot, you weren't supposed to kill the mother." So they tie the hands of the daughter because they're meant to take it back to their boss or something. Now Eren, they suddenly hear a knock on the door, and then they see it's Eren, and Eren is crying. Eren, this 12-year-old kid, is crying. And the guy suddenly, one of the thugs is the thug that killed the, the thug that killed the mother and the father, opens the door. And Eren, he's there like a lost crying kid, and he's like, "Sir, I've lost my family. I don't know where to go. Can you help me?" And then the father, what am I saying? The father, the guy who's the second thug who kidnapped, who's tied Mikasa. The first thug's kind of opened the door, right? So the second thug looks at the other thug, and the thug that's opened the door and says, "Yo, get rid of her." Just does this sign like, "Get rid of him," And in that moment, the guy's like, "No, kid, you gotta go." And in that instant, Eren stabs and kills. Somehow he has a knife or something. He has something. and he kills one of the thugs. Eren, this 12-year-old kid, he kills one of the thugs. He's got a sense of what's going on. He runs to the other. Suddenly he comes in. The big guy who's tied Mikasa. Mikasa's kind of there. What happens is, sorry, I don't know if Mikasa's tied or something. If Mikasa's hands are tied or whatever. But Mikasa's kind of just there, paralyzed in fear. And Eren, suddenly the other thug comes to kill Eren. Eren quickly runs in a room, and guess what? Eren had connected a knife to a stick. So Eren had been there for a while. He'd gotten there earlier. And so when the guy comes in the room, the guy doesn't know where Eren is, and Eren just stabs him. Do you know? So, yeah, sorry guys. I was just going over something internally. So look at what happens. So just keep it in mind, guys. Sorry for the pause, but I hope you're still following the story. So what happens is in this scene, Eren's killed the two thugs, okay? And yeah, if I remember correctly, he's killed the two thugs, and he goes to Mikasa, and Mikasa's hands are tied, and he unties Mikasa's hand. Then something very messed up happens. A third thug walks in and just looks around and sees the two corpses of the thugs, and then looks at the kid and says, "Did you do this, kid?" And that thug just grabs Eren's neck, this 12-year-old kid's neck, and lifts Eren up in the air and is choking him in the air. Do you know? Is choking him in the air. And Eren doesn't have time to grab the knife, or I don't know if the knife falls out of his hand or something, but he's being choked in the air, and Eren, his hand is pointed towards the knife, but he's looking at Mikasa, the girl. He's looking at Mikasa, the girl, and he's just shouting, "Fight! Fight!" while he's being choked out in the air. He's shouting, "Fight!" And Mikasa, remember, he's the 12-year-old girl who's paralyzed out of fear. And this is why I'm saying energy becomes conscious of itself beyond personality. Mikasa, the animators of the show were so genius because in that moment, if you were a director watching this, they're literally taking you, the audience, inside Mikasa's viewpoint. Suddenly, when Eren shouts at Mikasa, the director, the next scene makes it from Mikasa's viewpoint. Now, what's happening to Mikasa's mind? How's Mikasa seeing it? Mikasa suddenly gets a flashback and gets this realization. This 12-year-old girl who in this story ends up becoming one of the strongest fighters, do you know? Mikasa, in that moment, remembers her past. She remembers every moment in her childhood. She remembers a mantis killing a butterfly in her backyard. She remembers her father hunting like an animal for food. And then she remembers in the story they have these giant titans. I don't know if she remembers the titan. No, she doesn't remember the titan in that one. But she remembers cruelty in the past. Any moment before she was 12 years old, all the violence she had seen. And then she realizes the nature of the world is cruel. That means when you understand the cruelties from the outside, then this incredible strength comes from within. This is why if the cruel archetype of the self is weak, the cruel, violent person is the weakest human being, has the weakest mind. That means it's so easy it was to make them descend into their savage animalistic instinct, you know? I think the testament to an advanced civilization would be that nothing can make you descend into the past, you know? We are futurists by nature. because our survival depends on how we wonder about our future. So in that scene, Mikasa suddenly gets this flashback, this spiral into this she spirals into this realization, and she's going in this internal monologue, and she says that's the moment when I got full control of my body. And you see literally, she becomes like this next level intensity. She grabs the knife, she steps so intensely, she accesses her true power. Okay, guys, sorry I got interrupted. Pretty much, Mikasa, in that moment, she realizes the fear has nothing to do with her. The fear is the nature of the universe. She blames no one. She's not blaming the cruelty of the person. She's like, it's just the cruelty of the world. It's like, that's the nature of the world. The world can be very cruel, guys. I'm telling you. And there's nothing compared to uh, a sort of consciousness of your own energy, really. That's what life is, I feel, on some level. How you're conscious of energy. Mikasa acknowledges the nature of the world. Her fear becomes non existent. She saves Eren and stabs the thug. And and she understands what fighting means. Fighting externally is like unnecessary, but internally it means trying to it's a retaliation of intelligence upon the inevitable void. Guys, let me see if I can find for you certain quotes from this character Mikasa. This Mikasa is, I think, that this character in Hajime Isayama's comic series, Mikasa, I think that is the evolution, that will be the evolution of Western feminism. That it discovers its strength not through trying to be intense, because that character, you realize, Mikasa, you realize she becomes like a guardian angel figure for Eren, that 12-year-old kid. Ever since Eren saves her, from that moment, she in some sense becomes a kind of a defender of like Eren's soul, you know? And it's kind of like, let me tell you, it's the major difference, I think, between and of course, I'm just one person sharing a view, guys. But it's like the difference between feminism and motherhood. Do you know? And in motherhood, you are trying to raise mankind. Do you know? But in feminism, you're trying to make yourself equal. And usually, there's two ways you make things equal. Either you bring something to your level, or you rise up to the level of something. You know. So for me, she's this character that she is inspired out of this pure love. Her strength comes from the retaliation of her pure love against this world, you know? And you see, it's kind of, and later on, this is the point I couldn't mention at first, I told you I'll mention after. This character, she comes from a lineage of the most greatest warriors, do you know? So she's like a prodigy warrior in the whole thing. You, instead of man and woman trying to be equal, man should inspire the advanced woman, and the woman should inspire the advanced man. And we should have a archetypal evolution, because each phase of evolution of anything changes the spectrum of ability. That means your strength when you were a little kid compared to now is different, right? So your abilities change also as you're changing. So there's no one person that has an ability forever all the time in the same way. This is why I think we will realize the value of reality is that we got all this physical stuff to work with. There's an actual Lego building. There's we have to build civilization literally, and then we have to communicate to build civilization figuratively, linguistically. You know, language is an advanced technology. Used in the right way, you can bring paradise on earth. Used in the wrong way, you will think that there was no paradise. And it doesn't mean, I'm telling you, like, I have no allegiance to any sentence, to any thought. For me, it was kind of, it took me a while, I even consider, to realize that I am not the definitions that I have seen. It was a very incredible moment to realize that I don't know. My lack of knowing made me care about what I know. And then when I cared about what I knew, I wondered why is the unknown there? And really, your inspiration, your all those people seeking, they're sort of like I don't know. Some people I've seen. I mean, you see a lot of it online. If you Google life purpose, like a lot of things happen. So guys, Mikasa Ackerman, anyways, I looked up her quotes. She has this quote where she says, "The world is cruel. It is also very beautiful." She says, "Once I'm dead, I won't be able to remember you, so I'll win no matter what. I'll live no matter what." She says, if I can't, then I'll just die. But if I win, I live. And that's the thing. It's the beauty of the world, which is the human dimension, you know? That means it's kind of like, imagine like a pet owner giving a good steak to their husky or something. That husky would be like, "Yo, this is a higher dimension. Like when else would I find steak this cooked ever?" So it's like a paradise. It's a paradise-like moment, for that creature. So for me, our evolution is the consciousness to phenomena, and that consciousness to phenomena is something that I think it's the beautiful that's really draws the person. But beauty is not physical. It's not a physical thing. I think beauty has to do with what kind of world you're seeing behind your eyes. I think that's the thing, and most people don't care about how there is unknown variables throughout their moments. So those people who have a belief, let's say I believe the color blue is the only color, and so I would go in life, not seeing any other color except blue, denying the existence of any other color except blue. And what would that mean? That would mean I am not even in the world. So if you become too ideologically oriented as a creature, you lose sight of your humanity. But if you don't have thought and you realize language is like a tool, Tony Stark is not 24/7 in the Iron Man suit, and a believer is 24/7 in an Iron Man suit, you know. And I think we have surpassed the game of language. I think enough language worship, enough subject worship. Now we have to pilot towards the unknown sky again. That means there's going to come a point where all the teachers in university institutions are going to be like, they have to say this, imagine, at the beginning of class before they teach the curriculum. The the professor comes and says, imagine an auditorium filled with students. The professor comes and says, "Kids, legally I got to do this." And the professor says, "We are on a rock in the middle of nowhere, and all knowledge and language was in some sense an invention. And so it was a technology. It was literally, we made sound connect to an object through a symbol you could draw on a piece of paper. Okay? So we linked objects and subjects together, and the way we're doing that is every person is doing it in their own way. The way objects appear subjective to you, or subjects can appear objective, like that guy in Mount Shasta area in Arizona who thinks is channeling an alien. That's where you can say his subjective experience is as real as his objective experience. That's a person who feels that their imagination is showing them something that is more real than reality. But I'm telling you, it's not. It's beyond this internal cinematic language, and it is just beyond language. You know. I had this strange thought that if a person just is just throughout their life, they are just simple. They're in a simple state of view of life. Whatever complexity comes to them eventually has to simplify to their level to access them. And if the complexity has to simplify, it will never be the same complexity. I think that's the value Guys, somebody says that means your life sucks if the world is only blue. Can you imagine if everything you saw was blue? I don't think it would suck because you don't know any other color. Anything you see in this life can't suck if it has other dimensions to it. I feel it's just evocational. It's alignment with nature. I feel that the mind is dynamic, the body is static. We're trying to define the mind, but the mind can't be defined. So the mind seems to be a sort of pilot of attention of the body. That means if somebody told me what is free will, I would say it's my attention. It's just the presence of how I'm being a creature of attention while simultaneously I'm being an object, while simultaneously considering this object has a name, personality, backstory, and all this again. So guys, that was the point of like the Attack on Titan story. It was just simply this view that you shouldn't fear chaos because chaos can't exist without order. Do you know that means why does chaos always find order? Because it has nowhere else to go. Why does order always combat chaos? Why? Because it has nowhere to go. So when I say civilization 2.0 is a yin yang civilization, I've wrote about this. Guys, for those people, the color blue, the blue man group, the color blue doesn't suck. It made their careers. Like it's so incredible. I consider them to be one of the most unique musical phenomena. They literally went around the world and they're like, I'm blue, da, da, da. Literally, it's like, embodiment of a color. The Blue Man Group was how they personified a color. There we go. They were the first human beings who personified color, and I think they deserve some literary prize. Even though all they did was go around the world and say, I'm blue. Those people deserve a literary prize. Their creative innovation. I'm not joking, guys. Seriously, I feel like to personify color in that way on a massive cultural level is genius. So, anyways, guys, I hope this talk was helpful. I feel like I've kind of said everything I can about this. Um, here's the thing, right? Energy can be synonymous with being. Energy can be synonymous with being, and with being, there's no doership, there's no identity. It's like who are you when you're dreaming, or like who are you when you wake up in the morning before you're kind of even aware of the alarm. It's like that moment when you're turning off the alarm, you haven't gotten out of your bed to even be an archetype for the day. My psychology feels like an opportunity. My energy, I really have no opinion, I'm just being it. My attention, it's like a non-thing that I can move. Do you know, my attention, my free will feels like an invisible hand that is simultaneously being my mind. For me, I feel nothing is more worth it than advancing the communication of a civilization. And so psychology means we have an opportunity to paint a story of a better way where the whole system can happen. I mean, you got to think about it. It's only the force of habit that is stopping human beings. Because if every action was equal, we could totally do it, you know? It's just that we are living like a cyclical creature. It's like psychology is kind of strangely seasonal. Especially if we feel the environment kind of gives us a container and for our psychology to be like a liquid poured into that container. Wonder about what your eyes are. So many people are fascinated by the concept of stargates, but they don't realize your eyes are a stargate. They're a gate where starlight is moving through, is entering. So I think it's like there's literally two stargates on our face. Yeah. You know, and what is a stargate? A connection between two dimensions. And when it's like the phenomena out there and what we process as the phenomena are two different things. That means I have this very deep view, guys, that we can never perceive objects. What does that mean? Because the moment we perceive the object is infused with our own filter. So I feel we never see objective reality as it is. We see objective reality as we are. Do you know what I mean? That means back in the day, if I took this coffee cup with me with a time machine, and I went let's say back in the day, and I like gave this coffee cup to someone, the person I'd go to a normal person on the street and I'm like, hold this coffee cup. That person will literally look at this cup and be like, I have never seen glass made like this. You know? The object of the future is the subject of the past. The subject of the, or here, let me say it like this. An object has meaning only because we have a past to see meaning in it. We've experienced something to we have some sort of pattern recognition going on in our psychology. So me looking at this coffee cup, for example, is very different because it's literally everybody can look at an object and it can appear as its meaning can be different. So what does that mean? That means meaning is coming from your inner realms. What phenomena means doesn't have anything to do with the object. The objects are just there. It's how you are opening your attention to the moment that suggests the meaning you find in it or what you see. And we are natural beings, so the first approach towards any sort of conscious evolution or whatever should be natural. That means I realized, like I was like, okay, if the person if the person approaches it in an artificial way, that means you don't care for the result. Only when something is important for you, you want to be there. Okay, I remember I have, of course, sport asthma. That means only when I run, suddenly I go into an asthmatic condition. And I remember in my high school in Canada, Baby Glen, that was a lovely place. And it was, how can I say it? It was, we had there was something in Canada, it's called the beep test. Okay, and it's literally this test where every person in that kind of physical education class, physical PE class or whatever, everybody runs like half of a basketball court, and you got to do this 100 times, and it keeps becoming faster, and the beeps become longer. Okay, it's called the beep test, and I remember I was doing this, and I literally I had the disadvantage. So if this was like a chess game, I had the disadvantage. You know, my lungs were different, for example. But I understood that it was a game of continuity. And I was also like, let me see literally how far can I go if I attempt the extreme. And I remember the beeps would keep happening, and it would be strange because after some point, all the girls got tired, and it was only just a bunch of guys that were running, and one by one, everybody was running. Everybody was running, and I remember it was only three people left, and I was the third person left out of like I don't know, a class of maybe 25, and or maybe less, class smaller, but like I think 25. But anyways, in this whole class we were running, and what was keeping me there was just for me to see how far I could go. That's it. And I remember I was panting. I was literally like, I had to like internally manage my breathing. I had to rhythmically kind of find a rhythm I could breathe in and then keep increasing the speed physically, you know? And I'm proud to say I went up to 83 laps, like, you know? Third person, and then after a point I realized no, okay, the whole system's gonna collapse at this point. It was literally like I had to, like a pilot, just, you know, I had to literally like a pilot eject from the plane, you know. I was like, okay, too much, you know. And I just went and I lied down, and it was like this moment where for like literally it felt to me like 20 minutes, but I think it was like for 10 minutes I was just you know. And so I think the will is beyond the conception. I think it's not our psychology is not determined. It's not determined by just how we believe things or see ourselves. It is based on the overall vision, which translates on some level to an emotion, and on some level it translates as just an observance. You know. Honestly, it's like this is the best inspiration for life. You're here for a little while. If you're gonna try something, literally, like Charles Bukowski says, go all the way. Just go and see how far you can do something, or master a craft, or do, or whatever. You know, for me, it's like you don't have time in this life to wait for others to come to see life like you to help you. There's no time. After some point you will just become a general of your own greater order, you know, sense of order. And you just have to have this fearlessness where you're like, okay, I'm just trying it, let's see what happens, you know. This mentality is evolution's greatest achievement, the endurance of will. And I feel the more you comprehend the nature of your free will and your attention, the more you see freedom is not a concept. It is the opportunity to access the greater earth. Exactly, because you know why, Dylan? Guys, Dylan says something interesting. He says, I used to be a competitive swimmer. You get to a point, your muscles say, sorry, we're going home, but the mind is so strong. You know why the mind is so strong? Because it's like, the mind is like, I've come all this way. Let me just go to the end and see how far, you know? And that's the thing. It's literally, I think, what is honor for the human being in the future generations is where we're going to become an incredibly skill-centric civilization, and the honor is going to be like the max out of the effort of the skill. You max out the skill as if like you just have like three oranges and you want to drink orange juice, so you you cut the oranges, and then that becomes like a gym workout, you know, like a martial artist. You know, like you're, you know, getting orange juice ready for yourself, like Bruce Lee, you know. And that's the thing, you know. It's we're a conditional animal inspired by our unconditional soul, you know, our unconditional vision's echo. So anyways, guys, I'm going to end the talk here, but I'm going to open it up to Q&A for 10 minutes. And if, after 10 minutes, let's say 5. I think all right, let's say 10 minutes. Uh, so 4:58. Okay, all right. So guys, thanks for listening so far. If you want to tune out, feel free to do so. This is the Q&A section. I'm gonna step out of cyberspace. If you have a question, write it, and I'll give you an answer or whatever. Okay, so questions coming in. Nice. All right, let's. What if the physical limitation is just temporary to the point that you learn something from it? What if the physical limitation is just temporary to the point that you learn something from it, and after that you realize that you could perhaps reprogram it? I would term the last part of the sentence differently. It's like any time you attempt something in your own way for the first time and you try the extreme, it's like there's no such thing failure, it's only learning or success, as somebody had said. So what does that mean? You look at the feedback. So the more intense your effort and your intensity of concentration in action is, the more you get to see what happens. Do you know? So I would say that reprogramming can be a method, but you can also be something anew. You can be anew. Let's just create a word called be anew. I feel like creating a word, guys. Let's give it a try here. This should be the dictionary definition of this word that I've created, be anew. I feel it's like Beethoven JH pretty much gives maybe potentially a better answer than I can give. He says, don't just practice your art, but force your way into its secrets, for it and knowledge can raise man to the divine. So what does that mean? That means when you honestly do something and just to see what happens, that honesty, the psychology doesn't have filters of not deserving, filter resistance to deserving. Exactly, yeah. I consider that my eyes are changing all the time, you know? That's the thing. It's like the world changes. So self-definition is like a simulation in a changing world, Unless the self is kind of experientially attained or comprehended. I feel that temporality can't exist without eternity. I feel they are simultaneous. And I feel that if I am experiencing the temporary and I've been a temporary being my whole life, and the person, let's say, physically transitions. Well, what does that mean? That means you have stopped being temporary. You have stopped being temporary. So that's why I'm saying duality has two exits. Either it's infinity or the void. The singular void. I feel we are an attention that is free from the object and subject because it can observe it. It's like somebody, imagine person A and person B. Person B comes to person A and says, "Hey, person A, who are you?" And person A looks at person B and says, let's say, I am a happy person." Okay. And person B again says, "Who are you?" And the person says, "I'm a sad person." And then the person says, "Who are you?" And the person says, "I'm a great person." And then the person says again, "Who are you?" And person A says, "I am a weak person." And you see which one is it then? And that's why I'm saying we observe thoughts, so we never were our thoughts. We are the presence of an attention. I feel literally the brain is an antenna and consciousness is what happens when the signal is received. I feel that our imagination has to be solar powered. Our minds are solar powered. Our existence is solar powered. So I would say all philosophy would probably consider that the most important science is the study of light. What light is. And I was thinking, like, imagine you're an advanced civilization and you want to spread uh, evolution all over the planets, you know? And I was thinking, how would you do it? And I would think that advanced civilization would be smart enough to be like, "Yo, man, there's a sun where all its light beams go everywhere. You know, why don't we just, imprint some sort of code in the sunbeam? You know, I feel nature is uh, is is like an nature is the context and the concept. That's the thing about life, JH. Like you say, that the more you realize that your condition is not as limiting as you assumed. Yeah, because the assumption is temporary too. Problems are not eternal. They're eternal if you follow them. If your attention is on the problem, if the problem and the situation is more important, you become overpowered by the problem, so you never find an answer. But if the answer is more important for you, then you become the answer. Literally, the mind has a way of being something before doing something. So that was a good question, man. Thanks for the question, JH. I mean, guys, technically, the title is a question, so people can also give answers. It's Q&A, so you can give your answer to the title if it was a question. um, JH, can you elaborate what you mean? Are you talking about like my family and friends and all this, or do you mean like people in a society of influence? You mean? What do you mean? Oh, yeah, yeah, man. Yeah, of course. It's not even that, because you people don't understand this. Language is painting. Words are images at their core. And images at their core are how your attention is moving in the world. See, there's nobody who needs to. You might not believe it, JH. I started these talks in 2014, and do you know I have never told, kind of, not never told, but like only to people who I have known for a while, I've kind of talked about it, you know? And guys, you have to realize, so many people. JH, can I know where you're from? Like where you in the world you're living right now? Like where in the world you're listening to this podcast from? By the way, anybody in the talk, you can write where in the world you're listening to this. I think it'd fascinating for everyone to know. You know. So JH, I would tell you just search philosophy. uh, and for example, someone I would advise you to listen to, maybe if you like, I don't know. What was his name? Graham Harman. Graham Harman. You're gonna see it's philosophy. It's philosophy. So, did you know literally a branch of philosophy is metaphysics? And metaphysics is that which goes beyond the perception of physics, sensory physics. Excuse me, guys. I'm gonna post a picture. You're gonna see the branches of philosophy. Okay, and I'm gonna show you this. And anybody in the world can learn this. This is this is kind of one way it has been classified in I guess linear no, academia. I don't know if people see this. That's hilarious. Let me see if I can find a more soothing background. How do I not have a white background here? Alright, guys, this might work. This might. Okay, yeah, I think this is the best background I'll find to kind of show this to you. So look at this chart beside this, I don't know, bunny humanoid or cat humanoid kind of magic anime girl. So metaphysics is something actually that is discussed by many, but many people don't know how to approach it. So the way I talk about things is I explain the context, then I ask you a question about the concept. That way you know in what kind of way the question is being asked. You know? That means it's kind of like the communicator's responsibility to be conscious of who they're communicating, how who they're communicating to doesn't see dimensions of their knowing. So anyways, the major branches of philosophy, where does it lead us? Logic and philosophy of language, okay? Ontology and metaphysics, the study of knowing. We have methodology and epistemology. And then we have ethics. And all of these branch out in different dimensions, you know? So you got to understand, these are philosophy, knowledge, guys. I don't know, whoever you are in the world, if you hear the word knowledge, you better see a tree in your mind. You know, they all are branches coming to the same trunk, which is the question of just how we are being, how we're being human. You know, all of knowledge is a study of how we're being human. And you can say here where it says ontology and metaphysics, we're studying how there's being before the psychological narrative. So we're studying pretty much how we are, what we potentially were before we were a creature of language. And it's kind of hilarious because like ontology, every person's DNA could be their own. It could be a unique branch of ontology. You know, like literally how every person's sight is different. Let me see what's a good way we can elementally kind of classify these. Yeah, guys, just look at the branches. You see, like from ethics, we go to applied ethics, and then you apply ethics in business or you apply ethics in the medical fields. All these branches are lenses of perception, you know? And so the philosophy of language and epistemology, pretty much all of these are kind of like, it's like they are branches. I mean, I think really the first philosophy teacher, somebody went and told them, you got to make a curriculum. And the guy's like, how can I make a curriculum? Philosophy is about man's relationship with the whole world. We have to be talking about everything, you know? And then they're like, no, you got to make a curriculum. And the person's like, all right, okay, let's branch it out into ethics, this. But eventually it is the study of how experience and existence are dancing as the human being, you know? Guys, I am also trying to develop a community, an online community called School of Athens 2.0. If you're interested in that, that's kind of like uh, I created. I felt like that's my home in cyberspace. So if anybody wants there, like literally, I'm accessible there 24/7. You can just message and it comes to my phone. You know, even though it's been like a couple days, I've actually lost my phone. I don't think I've lost it. I think it's around, but it's not around me. You know. But anyways, guys, I guess I'll end the talk here. Thanks for tuning in. The question of the day is energy conscious of itself beyond psychology. You can answer in the comment section below to make this feel like it's on YouTube. And as as Mikasa says, the world is cruel. This world is cruel and merciless, but it's also very beautiful. And that's the thing. Consciousness is the beauty. And the world is just the world. Whether we liked it or not, atoms move this way. Phenomena happens. The weather, you can't control it. And sometimes even in your inner realms, in the human psychology, it can't be. And what do you do when there's a storm? You take shelter until the storm passes. And sometimes human beings, when their psychology or they're in a certain situation of intensity, what you can do is literally just stop and let the storm pass and then continue again. And this is all in a sort of tactical awareness where you are being the moment while simultaneously you're being a phenomenon in the moment. So you're always being aware of how you're being a phenomenon in the moment. So, anyways, guys, I hope this talk was helpful. Much blessings and namaste. Shinzu Sasaigo.